Everybody loves to work on the left hand. I get it. The left hand is flashy. Everybody likes to play fast and high. Okay, that's great. But the right hand is way more important. And if you haven't watched my video on bowing technique for the Dance of Iscariot, please go back and watch that first. And not just that, like when you're teaching this piece and you're starting to develop exercises, routines to make your orchestra sound really good on the Dance of Iscariot, teach the right hand first too. If your students have mastered their bowing techniques already, or at least have a good head start on them, it's gonna make the left hand technique a lot easier because that's one less thing they have to think of. String playing is a bimanual activity, meaning that the right hand and the left hand are doing something completely different. So on the piano, is that a bimanual activity? Not technically. I mean, well, I'm playing different notes and rhythms in my left hand than I am with my right hand. Okay, yeah, but you're still pushing down keys, okay? In orchestra, like one hand is like bowing or plucking or something like the other hand is like pushing down. So it's just a completely different game. And all of the musicianship, all of the style, all of the artistry is basically coming from the right hand. The left hand just refines what the right hand does. So we've got a good head start on the bow control and bowing technique. Now we're going to talk about the right hand. What do we need to work on to be able to play the Dance of Iscariot successfully? We're in E minor for the majority of this piece, but we do kind of play around in the dominant area in B minor, which means that we do have a lot of C sharps. And that also means that we have C sharps on the G string. And that's a problem if your orchestra is not great at playing augmented or 3/4 finger patterns, whatever your method book describes it as. Being able to play C sharps on the G string. If your students can't do that well, they're not going to sound great on the Dance of Iscariot. They're going to sound pretty bad. And when you're kind of troubleshooting this and trying to figure out, well, why aren't they playing in tune? There's some good ways to work on it, and there are some not so good ways to work on it. What you probably want to address are the thumbs in the left hand. And there are a couple of different things that they might not be doing that you would like them to do, or things that they're doing that you don't want them to do at all. So the first thing is thumb position. Where should the thumb be? And for all of the instruments except for the bass, that thumb position needs to come up. So for the cello, for instance, your thumb, when you're playing a B, second finger on the G string, that thumb should be even with the second finger. A lot of students don't know this. A lot of directors don't know this. And their thumb is still in that B flat place where it usually is for first position. So the extension that occurs is between the first and second fingers, not between the third and the fourth fingers. No, that's not what we want. We want this, okay? Thumb and second fingers should be aligned. Now, for violins and violas, the thumb can come up a little bit when playing extended third fingerings, and that's going to make it easier, and it also might loosen up the left hand for your students. So the thumb isn't just glued to the neck of the instrument for violins and violas. It moves all over the place, and it should. We don't want the violins and violas to squeeze the neck of the instruments. If they're squeezing the neck, it's going to be really hard to get that third finger down. It's going to be hard for them to play fourth finger too. They might not get enough finger pressure. They might not be able to stretch up as much. So relax the left hand and just have them push down and let them bring that thumb forward so that they can get that weight onto the string so they're not just doing it all with strength from pushing down the finger. In season 1, episode 2, I talk about left hand tone, and I talk about some strategies for how to develop finger pressure, how to alleviate that squeeze and how to get good left hand shape so that we can have the right technique to be able to play an augmented or 3/4 finger pattern and have good tone and have good pitch. Check out the video called Exercises. There's an exercise in here where I have them do like a biofeedback exercise where they put lots of pressure down and then they slowly lift the pressure away, and I have them notice when the tone starts to degrade and when the pitch starts to drop, and how much finger pressure they really need to make that happen. And so it just creates an awareness in the classroom of how hard you really need to push down. And if they're using the improper technique, it doesn't matter how hard they're trying to push down, they're always going to be working against themselves. Another trick to determine whether or not they're playing those C sharps with enough finger pressure is just have them finger C sharp and then have them pluck the C sharp and see if they can hear the tone ring. If they are pressing down enough to where it rings from the instrument for a good little while, okay, now you're using good enough finger pressure, okay? But if they play it and it's just like a little thud, like flip, 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 well, then they're not pushing the string down hard enough. They got to figure out how to use more finger pressure with the left hand. I've heard a lot of orchestras play the Dance of Iscariot, and I've heard a lot of them not sound so great on this mostly chromatic motion here, measure 3 and 4, and it's reoccurring, like it just keeps going, and if they can't get it, it's just not fun. So how do we play a chromatic scale? There's a lot of different ways that we can finger a chromatic scale, okay? We could do 1-1 right here, and we could do 4-4 right here, or 3-3 right here for violas, but we don't want to do it here. The fingering that's here is more or less correct. What we don't want to do is play 3-3 or 4-4 here, and we don't want to play 1-1 here. So this first note should be second finger. We use a different finger for each note as we go down, and that's going to be way more consistent and way more accurate than sliding everywhere. That's not an appropriate fingering for this. Some groups, they're shifting all over the place, so they're using backwards extensions and forwards extensions, and it's just not going to work. Here in the teaching companion, we have an exercise that addresses this. It has all of the fingerings in here, and when you practice it, please practice it slowly. Don't go on unless each note is in tune. In fact, the first time you do it, you might want to put a fermata over each note and make sure everybody's playing in tune before they go on to the next note. If they're practicing out of tune, it's going to ruin their ears, and they're not going to hear what an in-tune sound should be. And you can get used to out-of-tune playing pretty quickly, and some teachers even get used to out-of-tune playing pretty quickly too, and tuning no longer bothers them. It just doesn't sound as offensive anymore the more they hear it. And so the very first time it's out of tune, you got to stop it and you got to correct it, and you got to make them play in tune. Otherwise, you don't develop a culture of tuning within your ensemble. Because tuning, there are some physical reasons why we play out of tune, and I mentioned that, and maybe it's finger pressure or thumb position, whatever. But there's also cultural reasons why we don't play in tune, and one of those reasons is because we haven't agreed as a group that we're all going to play in tune. In Season 1, Episode 3, I have an entire episode on intonation and some strategies on how to build intonation, how to fix the physical problems that affect your tuning, and how to work on the establishment of the tuning culture in your program so that everybody's on the same page when it comes to intonation. Another thing that's really helpful is to do finger tappers. And in Season 1, Episode 4, I have a segment on finger tappers, and it's actually in the vibrato series. And I think, again, if your students are going to be technically proficient enough to play the Dance of Iscariot, they should probably be playing with vibrato too. Vibrato is a good thing to learn, and it holds them accountable to their left hand. Okay, so let's just say that like you're doing that thing where you're squeezing the neck. You're a violinist and a violist, and you're squeezing the neck of your instrument, and you're trying to vibrate. Well, it's going to kind of feel like Bart Simpson where he's getting choked by Homer. Are you little? You don't want that in your music. It's not going to feel good. Remember when The Simpsons used to be controversial? Like you'd see Homer choking Bart and everybody would be like, oh my goodness, that's domestic violence. And then compare that to what we see on TV now. I mean, the stuff that's on TV now makes The Simpsons look like Sesame Street. Once we get the technique down in the teaching companion, I have some left-hand drills where they can start to develop finger pressure within the finger patterns of the piece. So we just start on the D string and we just have them tap the E's, and then E to F sharp to G, G to A for all of the instruments, and they just tap the strings. And you don't need to do this with the bow. You can just have them tap and see if they can hear the pitches as they're tapping. They should be able to tap hard enough to where they can hear the notes. And then I have them do the augmented pattern. This is the one where they're probably going to need to work on it more to make sure that their hands are nice and balanced, so they have enough strength to play the C sharps. And then the problem that we have over here, especially for violins and violas, is that they're playing on their highest string, so the E string and A string. And a lot of students, when they switch to that string, they'll twist their wrist to play over here, and that's going to be really bad for finger pressure, okay? So can they rotate the elbow out so that they can play with a lot of finger pressure? Can they tuck the fingers in? Okay, if they can't do that and they're twisting the wrist, it's just gonna sound really bad tone, really bad tuning. So I put that left-hand drill in there also so that they can build those skills. Be patient when you're teaching, and have your students be patient too. Just everybody needs to be under the assumption that you're not gonna learn it perfectly in one day, okay? Your goal is just to keep getting better every day. Are you better than you were yesterday? Okay, well then you did your job. That's all we're asking. We're not asking you to be perfect on the very first day or even on the second day. We're just asking you to try to get a little bit better each day. And that is like compound interest. It builds up, it builds up, it builds up, and then all of a sudden we get really, really good. The next video is gonna be really fun. I'm gonna talk about style, and I really enjoy teaching style. I really enjoy bringing the music out of the piece. Now that we've got the bowings under our belts and the fingerings are going well, everything's in tune, well now we can start making this piece come alive. So I hope to see you in the next video when we talk about style.